All I've ever wanted to do my whole life since I was 18 years old is move the needle on popular culture. Just move it.
In 2014, Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre pulled off one of the biggest business deals in music history, selling Beats by Dre to Apple for a staggering $3 billion. It wasn't just a headphone brand, it was a cultural movement, a marketing masterclass, and a power move that cemented Iovine as one of the most influential figures in music.
We intend to fulfill Beats' dream, and that is to transmit music and popular culture to the masses, from the people in the studio, the way it feels and the way it sounds, to portability and transference by telephone. Record industry has to help deliver music to the phone for our industry to evolve.
From gramophones to mobile phones, ET phone home.
But what if I told you, before that $1 billion deal, Jimmy Iovine wasn't even supposed to be in the music business. He wasn't a businessman, he wasn't a rapper, and he sure wasn't a billionaire. In fact, he started as a struggling sound engineer who caught one lucky break on Easter Sunday. A break that would change the entire music industry forever. This is the untold story of Jimmy Iovine, the man who built legends, shaped hip-hop, and turned music into money. Let's go back to where it all started. Jimmy Iovine wasn't born into the music business. He stumbled into it. Growing up in Brooklyn, New York, he had no connections, no money, and no clear direction. His family expected him to get a regular job, maybe work on the docks like his father. But Jimmy, he wasn't interested in ordinary. In the early 1970s, he landed a job sweeping floors at the record plant, one of the most legendary recording studios in New York. It was the kind of place where rock gods like Jimi Hendrix and the Rolling Stones worked on their biggest records.
You started out by sweeping floors in a studio.
Yes.
Tell us how that came about and why did you want to start?
Well, first you have to learn how to sweep.
Okay.
Okay, and that's what I had to do. I come from an Italian mother, and you don't sweep in the house, right? So I had to learn how to sweep. Then you have to just be willing to work harder than the next guy. Forget how insecure you are. Just work harder than the next guy or girl, and be willing to listen and hear. Don't think because you did one thing good, now your ears shut off. I still have mentors, and I still listen to them. I still try what they do, what they say, even though I don't agree. And you have to be of service.
Jimmy had no technical skills. He was just a kid in the right place at the right time. Then, on Easter Sunday, everything changed. The studio was short-staffed, and an engineer called in sick. Jimmy, the 19-year-old assistant with zero experience, was thrown into the deep end. His first session? None other than John Lennon. Most people would have cracked under the pressure, but Jimmy thrived. He worked overtime, studied everything he could, and became obsessed with sound. That moment turned a nobody into an in-demand engineer, leading him to work with artists like Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, and U2.
So I had those three professors. Well, I learned from somebody who had an enormous experience, being John Lennon, to Bruce Springsteen, who was just about to break. And then all three of them were poets. So they were very, very particular on temperament and how to work.
But Jimmy wasn't just good at music. He had an instinct for power moves. And soon he realized he wasn't meant to just record artists. He was meant to build them. And that's when he made his next big move. One that would change the face of hip-hop forever. By the early 1980s, Jimmy Iovine had built a name for himself as a producer and engineer, working with some of the biggest rock acts in the world, Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, and U2. But while he was making hits, he wasn't making power moves. He was still just the guy behind the board, shaping sounds, but not shaping the industry. That's when he made a decision that would change everything. He was gonna start his own record label. In 1990, Jimmy co-founded Interscope Records, and from the start, it wasn't like any other label. While the major labels were playing it safe, signing pop acts and radio-friendly rock bands, went all in on controversy, culture, and risk. His first big bet, signing a rebellious group called 9 Inch Nails.
The only thing that works for me. Help me get away from
The music industry didn't understand industrial rock, but Jimmy did, and he turned them into stars. Then came his most controversial move yet. In 1992, Interscope became the distributor for a new West Coast rap label, Death Row Records.
and a dog. Ho, ho, ho. And every day is like Christmas on death row.
That meant Jimmy Iovine was now backing Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Tupac, right in the middle of the gangster rap explosion. At the time, mainstream America was terrified of this music. Politicians were calling for it to be banned, stores were refusing to sell it, and other labels were too afraid to touch it.
Death row may actually be a front for drug money.
But Jimmy saw what others didn't. This wasn't just music, it was a movement. He believed in Dre's vision so much that when Dre was leaving Death Row and needed a fresh start, Jimmy handed him a blank check. That check, it created Aftermath Entertainment, the label that would later sign Eminem, 50 Cent, and Kendrick Lamar. Jimmy wasn't just watching hip-hop evolve, he was engineering it. And as the industry changed, he was about to pull off his biggest play yet, one that would make him a billionaire. By the early 2000s, Jimmy Iovine had already helped shape hip-hop, from backing Death Row to launching Aftermath Entertainment. He was behind the rise of Dr. Dre, Eminem, and 50 Cent. But while he had built an empire in music, the industry was changing fast. CD sales were dying, streaming was taking over, and labels were losing power. But instead of fighting the future, Jimmy saw an opportunity. He realized that in a world where music was becoming digital, the new money wasn't in records, it was in how people listened to them. That's when he and Dr. Dre created Beats by Dre in 2006.
How did that deal come together? Who made the initial overtures?
Me.
So you saw this
Yeah.
before they did. Okay.
Well, I know them, and they just weren't ready to get into streaming. They didn't need a headphone company, and so they wanted to get into streaming. And eventually, we agreed that we could do this together.
The idea was simple: turn headphones into a luxury brand. At the time, people weren't paying attention to sound quality. They were using cheap earbuds. But Jimmy and Dre weren't selling headphones, they were selling culture. Jimmy used his marketing genius to put beats on every major celebrity, every athlete, and every music video. The headphones weren't just for listening, they were a status symbol, and the strategy worked. By 2012, Beats controlled over 60% of the premium headphone market. Then came the billion-dollar move. In 2014, Jimmy and Dre sold Beats by Dre to Apple for $3 billion, one of the biggest deals in music history. But Jimmy wasn't just cashing out, he was leveling up. As part of the deal, he joined Apple to help launch Apple Music, taking his influence from the recording studio to the tech world. Jimmy Iovine had done something no record executive had ever done before. He didn't just make money from artists, he made money from how people experienced music itself. And in doing so, he proved one thing: while artists make the hits, power players like Jimmy Iovine make the industry. Jimmy never picked up a mic. He never dropped a hit record. But behind the scenes, he shaped some of the biggest moments in music history. He went from a broke kid in Brooklyn to engineering for John Lennon, from producing rock legends to betting on gangster rap when no one else would. He helped launch Dr. Dre, Eminem, and 50 Cent, turned Beats by Dre into a billion-dollar brand, and helped Apple reshape the music business. But the craziest part? You barely ever hear his name. While artists get the fame, guys like Jimmy move the chess pieces. He wasn't just making records, he was making power moves. And whether it was betting on hip-hop when the world rejected it, or turning headphones into a luxury empire, one thing is clear: Jimmy Iovine didn't just play the game, he changed it forever.